Hello and welcome to the Jewelers Academy podcast. I'm your host this week, Anna Campbell, and I'm really excited to be talking with Heidi Hinda Chadwick. Heidi is a writer, a life coach, and a mentor who believes in expressing our creative genius, and she works as a coach and in her programs to help people do just that. So welcome, Heidi. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me on here, Anna. I am very excited about our conversation today.
Yes, I think we'll get into what we're talking about in a second, but I really just wanted to acknowledge that we're both coaches, and we believe in the power of coaching wholeheartedly. So we're actually each other's coaches. So we swap around and that has been amazing. So that's why I wanted to kind of invite you onto the podcast, because I know all of the wisdom and juiciness you can bring to us all. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And absolutely touche. I think it's, for anybody out there, we've talked about this before anyway, and I'm going slightly off topic already, of how, wherever you are, you also need support, and I think we've got a really beautiful, amazing, very inspiring. I always feel completely and utterly inspired after having sessions with you as well. So yeah, this is great.
Yeah, I do think this is important. So, I mean, we could come into that a bit more as we go through, because we're going to be talking about a subject that is near to both of our hearts and something that you work with a lot of people around, navigating our comfort zones. It's such a big issue for everybody in the world, every human in the world. But I think particularly for creatives, I think it can be a hot topic sometimes.
Yeah.
And obviously we're talking here with a lot of people who make jewelry, or maybe they have their own jewelry business, so there's kind of comfort zones around all of that, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, especially if you're a creative person, no matter what it is that you're doing, I think that comes with a certain level of sensitivity. It's almost like we have to have that. It's a superpower of ours, so that we can be inspired. We can then transform that inspiration using our hands, using our imagination into creating the pieces that we create. So that's really important. But then it also can come with some of the kind of sticky places, like you mentioned, navigating the comfort zone, how to move forwards, how to take those next steps, how to expand into whatever your vision is one of those places where, like you say, impacts so many of us. And sadly, means that a lot of people don't take those next steps. They don't bother, do they? And I think that's a real shame.
Definitely. So I really hope that we can help within this conversation kind of tease out some of these issues, and help you be inspired by the end of it to take even a little small step out of your comfort zone. So firstly, when we say comfort zone, I think people do have an idea of what that means, but what do you mean by comfort zone?
Yeah, great question. I think it's always good to actually get very clear, because I think it can mean something very different to each of us. So comfort zone is basically exactly really what it sounds like. It's when we are living in and from and taking action from this place that feels basically comfortable. But it's a funny thing, comfort zone, because in a lot of ways, when we're in our comfort zone, yeah, it can feel familiar. It can feel like there's no pressure on us, but it can also feel uncomfortable. It's a funny thing, isn't it? It's like a paradox that there's a discomfort being in the comfort zone. And I think that can show itself often by, well, we're going to get into this a little bit, and I'd be really curious as to what you believe are the ways that we can know when we're in our comfort zone, or when it's an issue for us. But I certainly think, when we are like hungry for something else, when there is something that we're longing for, when we're looking out at other people going, oh, I want to do that, or I can do that, or dreaming about things. And often that comes also maybe with feeling a certain level of either frustration or restlessness, as if your energy is ready and waiting to go somewhere else, but it's not.
I think that's such a great point, because I think sometimes the idea comfort zone, it sounds like, well, why wouldn't I want to be there?
Yeah, pull up. Yeah, it sounds like being on the sofa, eating a big bag of crisps. You got your favorite Netflix show on, your slippers. It sounds all right, doesn't it, really? In one
does.
level.
I think it doesn't sound. You could. I don't know, what could we call it? Like your complacency zone. I don't know.
I
You could
like
call it
that.
something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like comfort zone is like,
Yeah.
yeah, of course I want to be there.
Yeah, complacency zone. I like
I
that.
think I think there's something around that. The comfort zone sounds like I'm safe here, and if I go somewhere
Yeah.
else, I'm not safe.
I think that is a huge that thank you for saying that, Anna. That's it, isn't it? There's a certain level of we might be uncomfortable, we might be feeling restless, all of these things, we might have all these like desires, but we feel safe. And that is, I remember a teacher I worked with for quite a long time that would say to us that life is edgy. When we're really in life, we are living at the edge. And edges are they're edgy. That's what they do. That's their very nature is to be edgy. And that can feel both exhilarating and exciting. It can also feel terrifying and scary. It can make us freeze. But it's certainly an alive place to be. So what this teacher was saying is that we kind of know when we're really living because we're on that edge. We feel alive. We know that we're alive, basically. And I think often in this complacency, I'm going to call it complacency zone, thank you. We kind of don't. Almost like we're just half living, a little bit zombie.
Mm.
Does
I was
that
just thinking
resonate?
that, like sleepwalking.
Sleepwalking, yeah.
So it's that feeling of yeah, of it just getting along, just doing okay.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily where we want to be. But kind of coming back into the psychology of it, the evolutionary theory and lots of theories have shown that we focus more and we want to avoid negative emotions more than we want the
Mm.
positive.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we kind of always have to force ourselves out of it, because being comfortable, as I say, in evolutionary terms, would have been
Yeah.
very important for us,
Yes. Yes.
keeping us safe.
Yeah.
But that's not what we need right now. But still, our brains are still kind of trying
Mm.
to catch up to the life that we have now. And so we have to, I don't know
Mm.
if I don't like the word force ourselves, but we have to take action to move out.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because that thing of forcing ourselves, yeah, I agree with you. There's a negative connotation, but I think there's a certain level of getting behind ourselves. And, both yourself and I as coaches, I'm sure that one of the big things that we work with people is your reason why. What is the motivation for what it is that you want to be doing? So, we talk about this comfort zone place. The comfort zone is okay if you're perfectly happy in your comfort zone.
Yeah.
If you really are perfectly happy, you're feeling inspired, you're feeling relaxed, you're doing what you want to do. Maybe you've got other things going on that take up more of your time. Maybe what you're doing is a hobby and it's enjoyable, and that's as far as you want to go. But if you have a bigger sense of, I call this, your why. Simon Sinek is the big expert on this, and he's got a great book. Also talks a lot about start with your why. What is this? There's a reason, often connects with the sense of purpose that's in us already. We don't have to go searching for this sense of purpose. I think we just have to listen into it. That's the thing really that is the fuel. So if we have a fuel, we don't have to use force. We have to push the car all the time and use that force. We just have to know that the fuel is running to get that motor purring, and we can just sit in the seat. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'm going with it. And we can
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
steer, and the car is doing that for us because it has the right fuel in it. So your fuel is often linked to what is your motivation, what is your why, what is this bigger sense of purpose or meaning or vision that is pulling, sometimes really pulling or calling at us, that we can ignore and stay in the comfort zone. But I think after a while that gets a little bit like the caterpillar. It will get to a certain point where it can't stay being a caterpillar anymore.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable. It will die. And interestingly, that might be very dramatic, but there are people that talk about that our creative energy, our life force energy, it has to keep being directed and expressed in whatever way that is. It doesn't have to be a grand creative life. It could be arranging flowers on your desk, making your dinner, how you walk, and so on. But if we don't use that, there is something in us that atrophies. And I think that can often then lead to mental health issues, to depression, even physical illnesses, emotional dysregulations, simply because we're not allowing that energy to move in the way that it wants to move.
I think that is so true. I definitely agree with that. And I think going back to something you said before, I think as creatives, a lot of us, it's as our superpower, we have that creative energy, and the issue there can be is that we have these creative thoughts about what if this goes wrong, what if that goes wrong, what if they don't like this, and I think as creatives, as I say, it's our superpower, but like you mentioned before, it's also can be our downfall, because we can be like stuck in the what ifs.
The negativity bias. The negativity bias is known as, isn't it? Exactly. And that is innate. So if you are listening to this or watching this, you're not alone. It's strange. I mean, we're strange, aren't we, as creatures? That is the place we'll go to first, isn't it? Not the, oh my God, this is going to be a successful line of jewelry that I'm making. People are going to really like this. This is going to sell. People will really appreciate something new coming from me when they're used to the old things. All the reasons why we might not be, changing and following where our energy wants to go next. So it's really helpful that you say that to recognize, first of all, that we have this negativity bias, and it is part of keeping us safe, as you mentioned about safety earlier, keeping us protected. That is its job, and that's great, but it can also block us, be a bit of a roadblock in order to go forward, especially if we're believing it without actually, checking this out. So how let's explore this a little bit of, how do you know if you're stuck in a comfort zone? Is that something familiar to yourself, Anna?
I think what's interesting is that you can be in different comfort zones in different areas of your life, because in a relationship, or in your work, or in your creativity, or within your family, I think it's almost like it's not just one thing, isn't it? It's like there's different facets of our life, and we may be strongly in a comfort zone and happy where we are in some places, and in other places we've got that energy that you were talking about of kind of moving, I want to do something, but I'm in fear, or whatever that might be. And I did want to just say, it was because I had this thought, and I thought it was a good thing to think, and it is, congratulations to everybody here, because what you do now and what was previously outside of your comfort zone, you've enveloped into your comfort zone, your current comfort zone. And we've all done it. Where you are now, it may well feel comfortable, but if you think back a few years ago, and maybe it's not. So I think we can kind of, in hindsight, look back and go, well, yeah, actually, I've come a long way. This may be comfortable right now, but it wasn't always.
I love that. It's like learning new skills, isn't it? To begin with, like, what? Don't understand, I can't do this. And then, after a while, it's just second nature. We can just do it with our eyes closed. And then there's the next thing that we need to learn. And yeah, I love this, because I think as human beings, we have this tendency to, it's like we keep going. Society is very much about that productivity, beating the hamster wheel. So actually the pausing, like you say, to look back and go, wow, look where I am now. And actually, inviting you to do so, to have a really good think about that, to pat yourself on the back, and to celebrate. To celebrate where you are now, maybe even to look at what that journey has been like, what you've learned from that journey as well, because every time we take those steps, we go over that comfort zone, through that edgy place, which essentially a big part of that is because it's unknown. That's why it's we get stuck there, because the known is, as you say, familiar. The unknown is full of, as you mentioned before, the what ifs, usually the negative what ifs, rather than the what if, the exciting what ifs.
I know. And I think maybe we need to try and train ourselves, because if we're going to start thinking, oh, but what if this, what if this, and think of it in and kind of go into a negative spiral.
Yeah.
Let's try and train ourselves to think about, well, what if the amazing thing happens? What if this happens? What if I do this?
Yeah.
You know, and we are, if you like you mentioned, we have a negativity bias, so your brain will go there, and we have to be the creative person who's saying, no, you don't get to drive this car. I'll go back to the car. You're a passenger. You don't get to drive this car. I'm driving, and this is where we're going.
Yeah, exactly. And being very clear with that. And the big thing around this as well is it's okay to be scared. It's okay to be shaky. You're doing something new. Your voice might be cracked. You might have those sweaty palms. It's okay. We don't see that enough. I say bring back shakiness. We all know fear. We all pretend that we're okay all the time. But actually, if we're doing something that's new, first of all, congratulations on that. It's really brave to even consider. And secondly, it is being human, to allow all of the feelings, the fear, the physical sensations, the emotional responses to be there with you. Because I think a lot of the times what stops us is the thinking in our heads. And I know this of myself of, okay, I want the guarantee. I want to know what exactly to do. I want to know exactly what it looked like. I want it all that written and signed in blood by God or whatever. Then I'll consider taking the step. And if we keep waiting it's that thing of waiting for the circumstances to be perfect.
Yeah.
The circumstances are never going to be perfect, whatever even that means. Because we come up with excuses. I just want to say this.
Carry on,
It's another thing as well when we meet that and we're thinking about, we're hearing this calling, we're being pulled towards something, there's a strong desire, is part of how the negativity bias will work is it will justify itself. So it might come up with all these reasons, the what ifs that could go wrong. And then it's very clever, the mind. It will then start to give excuses, but they might not seem like excuses, like, I don't have time, or, whatever it might be, to put more energy into this. I'm too old. That's a big one. It's too late. I'm too young. I don't know enough. Blah, 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 blah. And then we can basically almost sit back and go, right, there you go. That's why I'm done. I'm finished. I've given my, end of full stop. Look for where your excuses are. Do all this with, I always say, with kind curiosity, because essentially what we're talking about here is a part of the creative process. Meeting our comfort zone is part of the creative process. It's where we grow. So we do all of this with curiosity to understand more. Because if we know how much we struggle every time we reach an edge of growth, after a while, if we're really investigating this, even write it down. I know I'm going to go into this. I know I'm going to do that. I know I'm going to eat a whole cream cake. I know I'm going to go online shopping. I know I'm going to just zone out for X amount of days. If we know that, it almost in a way becomes a strange ritual that we know we have to go through before we then get down to it. And it can take some of that frustration away, going, oh, I'm in this weird place. It's almost like I'm getting the engine running, or I'm pulling the arrow back to launch myself, and this is where I go. So it's a useful place to be aware of.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think sometimes we can be in that space of the kind of like all of the I don't want to call it excuses, because it's real, it's real, it's real life. It's in our minds. It's the things we're concerned about. It's our amazing imagination kicking in, going, but what if, like you said. But I think the issue can be is that we think that we can wait until the fear is gone.
Yes.
And then we step.
Yeah. No, it won't
and
go
it
away.
never, ever, ever, ever works that way around. Ever.
I will tell you.
It would be great if it did.
Yeah, I mean, I could write a whole thesis and more on fear. I've lived most of my life in fear, and that's part of what stopped me personally in the past from taking those actions and steps over those comfort zones. And that's impacted my life in many, many different ways that I'm not going to go into here. But I think it was the realization at some point that the fear is not going to go away. So fear is a familiar to me. And I'm actually in, I can feel it now. I'm doing a performance on Saturday with a friend of mine. It's the first time I've ever done it. It's for a friend's wedding. So, no pressure. We haven't really like practiced this. It's all, a lot of it's very improvised. No idea really where it's going. I can feel it. It's there. Now, in the past, maybe I would have been like, no, I'm too scared. No, I need to know. Now, I've got all that fear there, but I'm more interested in going, well, I'm just going to go for it. But it might be, what if it might go really well and that would be great and we'll be buzzing, or it might be an absolute flop. Could be completely wrong, no response from anybody. However, I will have done it.
Yeah.
And that is everything to me. And I think one of the things, and we were talking a little bit of this just before we started recording, is around what stops a lot of us is two things. One is expectation, and then wanting to avoid the disappointment that can come with that. And the second thing is we have a very, very, I think, quite a negative association around the word failure.
Yes.
Making mistakes.
Yes, absolutely.
I think both of those need to be kind of owned, that if you're a creative person, if you're in the creative realm, if you're out there making stuff, you have to get, I don't know if jiggy is the right word, you have to get jiggy with both of those.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, and it's almost like we have to try and alchemize that fear into energy forwards, isn't it? It's about that, Susan Jeffers, feel the fear and do it anyway. It unfortunately, that's what it is. That's the only way forward. It's not about, it is about kind of acknowledging those fears. I don't think it's about pushing them away and going, you're wrong. I think in some ways, if we do that, it comes back, like you said, it can come back into depression, anxiety. I think it can come back even more if we try and just go, no. But if we can acknowledge that and say, look, this is completely human. I want to try something that's new. It's outside my comfort zone. It's outside of what I normally do.
Yeah. It's
completely natural for me to feel these things, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, this thing of failure. I think one of the things we have to be very aware of as creators, and I can hold my hands, if I had more hands, I'd hold more up here, is of being caught in a big part of how fear manifests itself. It's very clever. So the controller is part of how fear manifests. It needs to be under control, need to know how everything's going. Perfectionism, people pleasing, and procrastination. I call them the 3 Ps. The 3 Ps, little Ps.
I love.
They seem harmless, but they are not. And just to kind of just check in with oneself, if we're a perfectionist, which is a form of control, it's actually a form of fear, really. So we won't try things because we want to get it right. It's funny because we don't see, you might see a piece of art, or you watch a movie, or you'll read a book, and or you go and see, latest designers as jewelry, keeping it very topical, what we're talking about here. We only see the pieces that have worked. We don't see all of the stuff that was thrown away, discarded, kind of nearly there, but not quite, painted over, thrown into a ball and thrown across the side of the room in frustration. We don't see that bit. We also don't see the amount of time maybe it's taken this person to be able to present what they do. We just see the, I call it the kind of the filmic or the biography version. You get that much in a biography. You get, your 2 hours maybe in a movie, or 3 if it's Oppenheimer. But there you go, that's okay. But that's it. You're not going to get all these other moments which maybe are boring, maybe are frustrating. You're trying stuff. And also, this is how we learn.
Yeah. I was just about to say that with a piece of jewelry, we can't go from here to here without doing the steps in between. We can't get to that point that's going to, we're going to sell or whatever until, we've tried a few different things, even if it's in paper or card or whatever. But tried and like, oh no, that doesn't work, what's next? It's a process. It's not just like an end thing. And I think sometimes that things like social media don't help with that, because a lot of times we're just seeing the ta-da moment.
Oh God,
We're
yeah.
not, a lot of people are sharing more of that, and I feel like we feel that they're much more authentic, we understand them much more, and we connect more with people who are sharing some of the process that they're going through. But we can't get from here to here. And the idea that, our brain thinks, well, until I can get to here, I'm not even going to start on the first step. It's just, we know, I think, in ourselves that it's wrong, but the fear can sometimes be so big. We're not, like, we do want to say that Heidi and I, we're not discounting the importance of this. And in some ways, the fact that we're coaches is because this is what we do. This is what our story has been, and we love to help other people with that story. I think that I'm speaking for you here as well, but I feel that's
completely. True. Because also, if there's something, I think a lot of this is what makes you feel alive. I work with, living a turned on life, this erotic life, I call it, which is not what we think. When we think of erotic, it's a very, very tiny part. Erotic life is living a life that feels meaningful, juicy, embodied, engaged, exciting. We want to lean into it. It means we feel everything. So if we're feeling all of that, we're going to feel fear. We're going to feel disappointment. We're going to feel all these other things as well. It's the willingness to be open to feel it all, to have that fulfillment of a life, whatever that looks like. So this is absolutely a part of that. And the question is, are you willing to go on that ride? Are you willing to fall over? Are you willing to show that vulnerability? And yeah, I think we can't escape comfort zones. But I will say one more thing before maybe we go and look a little bit about how, practical ways for people that are like, yes, okay, I'm ready. I want to do the thing. I'm terrified. I'm shaking, but it's all good. I think that I was going to say something and my brain it's gone. So I'm just gonna
okay. I'm sure that I will come back, but I think what I was wanting to take from what you were just saying is that to live that life, to have those strong emotions, we're going to have the equal and strong opposite.
Yeah. We can't choose, not a buffet.
I love that. I love that. And also, there's a term that I've heard you use, which I love, which I think is lovely, that idea of bold vulnerability.
Bold vulnerability. Yeah. Yeah, it seems again like a paradox. Like a lot of things in life seem like a paradox. It's, if you think about what a warrior is, and I think about and also the word vulnerability. Vulnerability means the ability to be wounded. And I used to teach yoga for 20 years, and there were 3 warrior poses, and all of them involve the space of the heart, the area of the heart, and the heart energy center. Don't worry, that's as woo-woo as we're going to get. Being incredibly open and receptive. So to be a warrior, to have that boldness, to have that courage, means we have to allow our hearts to be so open to life that we are going to be hurt. We're going to be wounded. We are going to allow ourselves to go, do you know what? I'm done with protecting myself because this doesn't feel satisfying anymore. I'm open to that because I know I'll deal with it. I'll grow. Usually resilience is the big thing that we grow. I'll grow wisdom. I'll learn what not to do, as well as where I want to go to. So that's where that comes from. And again, that's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for many of us because I think society, again, going back to what you touched upon social media. Yes, it is getting better with certain people, but generally, vulnerability is not something that is given so much kudos. It doesn't have a high ranking place, like shyness. I work a lot with shyness because I'm very shy, believe it or not. And I was very shy. And where is shyness isn't valued, get over yourself, you're not heard or you're too quiet or all these kind of things. Very damaging to hear that. And yet, again, superpowers, there's a lot of grace in those places. There's a lot of grace in vulnerability. It also helps us to connect with each other more as well, I think.
I love that. And I think we're going to come into some practical, we're going to get to some practical
We
steps,
will.
but I think what this part is all about is about just feeling like you're not alone. These fears
Yeah,
come up, and
always.
you know, and we have a choice whether we want to step out or not. And also there's not a judgment around that, because I think we do tend to step when we're ready and it's time. But I think, like you said, if we can feel the few little superpowers we can try and develop in ourselves, and that you know, resilience is one of them. The ability to know, whatever happens, I will be able to deal with it. I've dealt with 100% of the things that have happened to me in my whole life up to this point, and you know, and that's what I need to remember. So, you know, we're not saying that it's easy. We do have some practical steps to give you to help you come out of your comfort zone. We're not saying you have to jump off the cliff.
Hell
You
no.
can take a little step. It's not an all or nothing, and I think that's a part of it as well. I think people do feel that it's kind of like, I'm either all in or I'm just giving up.
Yeah, do you know, I'm really glad that you mentioned that, because it's one of the things that um, I feel like I've been muscling, and I think all these things are muscles. So things like resilience, you know, learning how to have bold vulnerability, all of these things, taking little steps. For me, they feel like a muscling of some kindness. And that all or nothing thing that you mentioned, that was very familiar to me. All in, burn myself out, get overwhelmed, blah, 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 disappear, nothing for ages, and then back, not sustainable. Um, so for me, the muscle of consistency is what I've been building this year. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
really important. If we think about comfort zones of, well, you're saying about, you know, all or nothing, or am I ready or am I not? I think if there's always something, maybe it's even in picking up a book and reading a few paragraphs of something you're learning about every day, or having a look on Pinterest and making a board of the stuff you're inspired by, or reading about somebody, or, you know, going out and I don't know, taking your sketchbook and you see something really lovely with light or whatever that you want to capture, maybe with a photograph. It doesn't have to be these huge things, but it's almost like you're just dripping you're kind of feeding where you want to be going. You're feeding that fuel a little bit more. You're keeping that motor, as I spoke about earlier, just gently keeping it warm. And that's okay. That's okay to be like that for a while. I think then we know that we've already kind of, you know, dipping our toes in, splashing our feet about a little bit. I want
Yeah.
to say one more thing actually as well. And I think this goes back to something you said quite earlier on around, you know, the comfort zone place shows up in actually every area of our life. We can maybe look at that and go, oh, you know. And I think one of the ways that this happens, and this is a great thing for creatives to have as a tool, is when we stop being curious. It's like we take something for granted. Maybe we take our partner for granted. Maybe we take kind of where we're living for granted. Maybe we take the work that we're doing for granted. Maybe we're taking, you know, the kind of company we're spending with people. Maybe taking the the method that we're using or techniques. They've kind of become so familiar that we've stopped looking at them with fresh eyes. And that
Mm-hmm.
is huge. This is
Mm-hmm.
huge. When we take things for granted, it can keep us at this place where we almost feel like, oh yeah, I know everything now. You know, it's that kind of energy. So I would really encourage people just to kind of, first of all, just go, am I taking where I am for granted? Have I dropped into that place? And a way to change that is to imagine you're seeing what you're doing or you're engaged with something as if for the first time. So you see the wonder. Because things are always changed. You're always different every time you come into the studio. You're a different mood, different feeling, different things have happened. That can all go into the inspiration you have for what you're doing. That might even be what helps you to just very easily move out of your comfort zone without even realizing you have, simply by shifting that way of seeing.
Mm. I love that. I think that that's such a good point to make. And I think it's good to kind of come into some of those you said a few things, but are coming into those practical steps that we can take for getting out of our comfort zone. And I definitely think those little steps, those looking at things with different eye, you know, with new eyes, can sometimes be really helpful. And in some ways, when we are very familiar with things, that sometimes is a sign that you're in your comfort zone, and maybe you do need to buy a new plant for your studio, or a new piece of art, or
simple,
a new tool, or try try a different material that you've not tried before, or I don't know, there's like little things you can do that doesn't have to be the big leap, the big step.
beautiful. Yeah, I love that. And especially, this time, I don't know when you'll be hearing this, but we're just moving into autumn, really, or in a new season, and there's always a sense. I always want to have a massive clean. I'm sure that'll pass. But no, I'm actually excited. And there's something about changing things around. So changing a studio around, as you mentioned, Anna, getting a plant or putting a new piece up. Maybe you've listened to the same kind of music for a while, or the same kind of podcast when you're in the studio. Try something different. Just trying something different. It's improvising, isn't it? In a very small way, could just give that whole new boost of energy that we've been lacking in a way. So yeah, we are going to talk about the practical things we can do. So what are some of the things maybe for yourself that when you look back at what's helped you, supported you to move out of your comfort zone, or what maybe you offer to clients that are coming to you with this issue, Anna, that you'd recommend?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's lots of different things. Certainly for me, one of the things that I have always loved doing, and I did it without really realizing what I was doing, and now I'm kind of more mindfully do it, and that is by taking classes. So I might take last year I did a thing where I did 12 different classes. I did one a month, something new. I learned something creative. It wasn't jewelry. I didn't do any jewelry classes at all, actually. Not for that anyway. But I wanted to do something that was completely not going to be something I was going to take on and do forever. I wanted to try it. I wanted to just see.
There's no pressure. There was no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. Yeah. Also, I was supporting a local artist, so I went to a workshop, I went to a class, so I supported them. I learned something new. I met more new creative people that I hadn't met before, and it was a no pressure thing. And some of them I've kind of kept doing, and I've really enjoyed doing. Some of it was like, yay, I'm glad I did it, but I'm not going to, it's not something I'm going to come back to. But I always feel like it doesn't have to be a creative class. It could be a language or something you wanted to do, anything you want to do, really, I think. I always feel like we have to just follow those little nudges that we get. It's like, let's just what about this? Why don't I try this? But not say I'm gonna, this is going to become my whole personality, because I feel like sometimes, especially again on social media or whatever, we often, in hindsight, we see the journey that we've taken to get to where we are, but when we're looking forwards, we don't know where we're going particularly.
We can't know.
We can only take a little step up. We talked about it as like the idea of going up the mountain. We've got to take one step at a time, and there's not just one path. And there's not just one direction to go. We could go slightly this way and then we're coming back. And it's all about, I think, not necessarily putting pressure on it and just saying, oh, I'm interested in this. Why don't I just go and try it?
Oh, I so love that. And I love that image of the mountain, because that's also something I think we have to be careful of here is, the comparison place, because we're all different. We all have different paces. I'm super slow. And when I honor that and I celebrate it, that's cool. I know where I am. Things are moving at their own pace. And I have friends that are like Speedy Gonzalez, they have an idea and it's done. They don't have to think about it. And I could compare myself to that or go, there's something wrong with me and why can't I do that? But I'm not made like that. They are, and I think that's really important to honor the pace that is right for you. So yeah, I really like that. And also the thing is as well, the more higher up we get up the mountain, the more we can see, which we can't see from where we are now. Yes. And then maybe that's like, oh, actually, I want to go towards that. Or that's interesting. Let me explore that over here. But we can't know that until, like you say, we've started taking a step. So taking first steps in whatever, I think that's a really big practical thing. What is a first step? It could be something really big, like I say, if that's your nature and that works for you. It could be a tiny little exploring of something, Googling something, going to look at new materials, not have to buy anything, just go and look at them, and then go home and have your cup of tea or whatever. So the first thing is, what would be a first step that feels okay for you? It could be you feel a little edgy, but it's not going to feel, because one big thing that happens to us when we reach that comfort zone, it's very edgy, is we freeze. Or we go, our nervous systems. I want to talk a little bit about the nervous system here.
Yes, please do.
Yeah, it's become, there's a lot more talk about nervous system, and you might be thinking, well, I'm an artist, I'm a craftsman, that's got nothing to do with me. I think it is, and actually it's a big part of how I work with artists as well now, because we can, and this is, I say we as a bigger sense of the human beings, but we can get very overwhelmed and overstimulated and burnt out and have all of this. We don't know why we're frozen and we can't move, and why we always seem to reach that same place, or we drop everything, the all or nothing, as you mentioned. And a lot of that is to do with how we regulate our nervous system, because this is really how much we can bear, how much capacity we have. So if we imagine that when we reach our comfort zone, we're going to a new place of growth and expansion, we need to be able to bear that. It's not going to spin us out. So there's a lot of stuff that you can look up all over the place, luckily these days, to get some information around nervous system. But essentially it's about, how do we stay grounded? How do I stay rooted? What kind of things keep me grounded? Is it going for walks in nature? Is it having hot baths? Is it making sure I eat well, sleep well? What is my routine like? That I need a bit more support? Do I need to try things like meditation or yoga if I'm not doing that? What are the things that help me to feel, going right back to what you said at the beginning, Anna, safe? Because if we expand too much, our whole system can feel, whoa, emergency alarm, I don't feel safe. So we need those grounding, those anchors, in order to feel that we can expand our capacity easily, actually. So that's a big part of comfort zones, is to explore your relationship to your nervous system, to being grounded, to your edges in that way, and how much you can bear in your life. Little steps.
Yeah, absolutely true. And I think it makes such a difference, because I do think we do get into that, like I mentioned, this all or nothing thing. And I don't, as you say, for some people that's what they do. But for others, it's not our way. And I think we need to find our own way. And I think the issue is we know it in hindsight, but we can only know it by taking those steps. Like, no, is this the right way? No, it's not. Okay, let's go this way instead. But it's only, we can't do that from thinking.
No,
we can't think our way there. We have to do. And I think the other thing that we were talking about on this is sometimes we can feel very, very vulnerable because we feel very alone. And I think it's an important thing, is that you don't have to do this alone. I mean, I mentioned about going to workshops and little classes and just finding somebody who could just show me, because rather than me, I'm not one for, I don't know about you, but I'm not one for reading the instruction manual. I'm like, let's just try. That's me. And but actually that I can get myself very frustrated because I don't, and then I don't.
And you have to, you're like, damn.
So actually taking a course is good for me because that works really well for me. But it's around understanding and knowing yourself, and it's around saying, I'm going to try this, and it may work or it may not work, but whatever happens, it's going to be a positive because I'm going to know either way.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that thing, isn't it? Is it better to know? It's like that it's such a cliche, but at the end of your life, you're going to be like regretting, I wish I tried that, because there is all these beautiful things that you can read about now of people at the end of their life. They don't regret, things that we think, I wish I had more money in my bank. Or blah. It's more about, I wish I tried that. I wish I'd taken that risk, because a lot of this is about risk, and you might have to do risk assessment. If that turns you on, that floats your boat, get your spreadsheet out and do your risk assessment. That's absolutely fine. But as Anna just mentioned so beautifully, you can do that till the cows come home. But then you have to take some kind of action. You just have to get up there and do something. I would also add to this, kind of supporting getting out of your comfort zone, is to get very clear of what what is really stopping you? What are you scared of? What are you scared of? Get really honest with yourself about what those things could be, and then really look at those. Is it scared of making a fool of yourself? Is it scared of, no one's going to understand you? Is it scared that you're gonna take the wrong path and have wasted all this time and energy of your life? You can write those things down. Let those fears be heard. And
Mm-hmm.
this is, I'm afraid to say this, but I'm going to say it. Yeah, you might. That is bottom line, essentially.
Yeah.
We cannot make this safe in that way. This is why the safety has to be found in our body and nervous system. That is bottom line. If we're taking any risk, we have to then go, okay, right, I'm going to make a fool of myself. I'm going to waste all this time and energy trying this thing. It's almost like you kind of take the fear and you go, I'm going to do that. It's a very
Yeah.
powerful thing. Something I've done myself is if you're concerned about making a fool of yourself, why don't you take on the attitude? It's a little bit subversive, but this is where it's quite fun to go, how can I make a fool out of myself doing this?
I love that. That's such a great question.
Because you take the power away from that fear. How can I get this so wrong? Because then you're taking wrong and right away from this. It doesn't make any sense. So you can take some of those fears. How much time and energy can I waste on develop this new line?
Love that. And I
It's
also
so
think it's
fun.
like, you can say that, but then I would say, on the other side of that, how much time are you wasting in fear, worrying about that?
Oh yeah, my goodness.
It's just that,
That's
it's the same
so
amount of
good.
time,
Yeah.
probably. It's the same amount of energy that we're using. And so I know I'm not saying it's easy, because this whole point of this is we're talking about those things we're all get into where it takes a bit of fear, and we have to take that step. So I'm not negating that in any way, but I'm just saying that we're using that energy, we're using that, it's there, we're using that time, we're wasting that time in one way. Why don't we waste it in another way? It's kind of like, yeah,
Yeah. Or
let's
not even
play with
waste.
that.
Let's change that. Rather than wasting the time, can we invest the time?
Yes.
Then there's something that's going to appreciate in that space, whatever that might be. I just want to say as well about really, um, where we get stuck a lot with comfort zone. And like you mentioned, you touched upon this around thinking about it and in the mind and trying to work it out from that way, which if the mind's not giving you the answer already, we're looking in the wrong place. So the question, and this is what changed things for me a lot in my life quite a few years ago, because I always used to ask, how do I do this? How? It's the wrong question. How is always the wrong question.
Mm.
So if it's not about how, that's nothing to do with us. If we don't know that already, it's nothing to do with us. We can put that to one side. If the energy is there, the excitement is there, there's bubbles of excitement you talked about before, you want to follow, curious, and so on. So the first question is, well, what? What is it that's exciting me? What? What is it calling me? Okay. Maybe why? What's the fuel? And then you just take those steps in. Yeah, you roll your sleeves up. You take a course, as Anna said. You do some research. Maybe you join a class or a club. Maybe you work with a coach. Hello, that's what we're here for. Maybe you ask for help. Maybe you learn about vulnerability. Okay, but forget about how. It's a red herring, the question
Yeah.
of how. Keeps a lot of us stuck somewhere that we don't want to be. And I want to say one other thing about comfort zones is that once we've gone over an edge, for a while, it will all feel new and fresh, and we're in a new landscape to explore, and that's amazing. And at some point, we will come to the edge of that comfort zone, because I think that's life, isn't it? I don't think we can avoid that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's always going to be a kind of, a pushing of the boundary, a trying something new, and then that becomes our new normal, and then there's a new boundary, and then there's a new push. But what I like, you mentioned about autumn, and I also like about it is that it isn't that we just have to go the whole time. I think there's a kind of a seasonal thing around it, and I'm not saying it's around the seasons particularly, but I think there are times where, you know, things are growing, it's the spring, it's the summer, but then there might also be times where we just have to bed in a little bit and just see where we are and how, you know, am I enjoying this? Is this what I want to continue with? You know, what's next? And it's very cyclical, and it's not go all the time. You must be in fear all the time. It's that kind of pulling forward and kind of retreating. It's that kind of forwards and retraction type thing. I think it's all of those things together. And I'm just looking, we've been talking for ages, and I'm sure we could talk. We do talk for hours.
We do, don't we? So good. I've learned so much myself just from having this chat today as well. It's been really inspiring for me. So thank you.
Well, I'm hoping it's inspiring to everyone who is listening or watching, and we would love to hear from you if it is, because you know, love to have Heidi back to talk about other things, because there's suddenly loads more ideas have come up, lots of other things that, you know, that relate to what we're talking about here. But I hope that it has been an inspiring conversation. We would love to hear from you. Please do kind of connect with us. Where can people find out more about you, Heidi?
Thank you. So I'd say probably two main ways. One is if you're on Facebook. I do have, it's the Creative Genius coaching group, and once a week I do go live on there, just in that group for about an hour, talking about some aspects of the creative process. So that's really, really juicy, and it's a really gorgeous closed group, and everyone is very encouraged to collaborate, to share where they are in the process, to ask questions, to be who they are. So that's a really beautiful place to come to. The other place to know more about the programs that I run and the coaching packages, and to read some more of my writings as well, is my website, which is HeidiHindaChadwick.com. I'm sure all the deets will be somewhere around wherever you're listening or watching this podcast.
We'll make sure we have all that in the show notes.
Wonderful, thank you. But I've really enjoyed this today.
Yes, we'd love you to kind of reach out to us if you know, if you found this this helpful to you. We'd love to hear that, because it's great to know. So you can also kind of let us know at contact@jewelersacademy.com, or you can DM me. I'm on Instagram mostly, so Anna C. Campbell. You'll find us there. But I'm sure we will have you back, Heidi, and I'm going to see you very shortly again anyway, soon. But thank you so much for everything that you have brought here today. I really feel like this was such a great conversation. So thank you.
Thank you for having me on here, and speak to you soon.